I had the perfect business plan. I had the perfect funnel all planned out. I knew exactly what I wanted to create. I spent days, nights working and creating this perfect business plan until I heard God say to me, delete it all. In today's video, I'm going to share with you why I choose divine direction over strategic progression and how it has completely changed my life. Hello guys, you're welcome again to my YouTube channel. This is a channel where I teach women how to be able to attract premium wealth and how to build a premium brand that comes from a place of ease, alignment, and grace. If you're new here, please do well to hit that subscribe button. Now today is just going to be my own story, and I'm going to share with you exactly how I had the perfect business plan and a perfect funnel, and God told me to walk away from it. Well, for someone like me as a child of God, I'd love to follow the promptings of God, and I've always wanted Him to lead me in whatever it is I'm doing. Now, one thing I know for sure that God has called me to do is, aside from being a child of God, is being a bearer of kingdom wealth. I knew that even right from when I was very young, even when I had nothing, because I didn't grow up in a perfect or rich home. I grew up without a silver spoon, but I knew that I had that call upon my life. And so for the longest of time, I've always been this entrepreneurial lady, even from my high school days, as you would call it, or secondary school back at home. And I've always been this particular lady that was always entrepreneurial, trying to do this business, trying to do that business. I went into university and I continued in that light. I had a beauty company, and the same thing happened after I went for my master's degree. I've always been that person. But the thing about it is, I think after I started my digital business, that was about a few years ago, I was doing pretty well with it. Sincerely, I was doing well with it. I had mentors that had made 9 figures that were mentoring me, and one thing happened. I wanted to launch this awesome funnel, this awesome course, this awesome business, like you'd say. I had it all planned out, right? The perfect funnel. I spent days, because I personally love to build my funnels myself, and so I spent days building these funnels, drafting it out. I'm someone that I love to talk about business plans a lot. I love to draft out whatever business plan I want to do. I spend days drafting out this perfect business plan. And the day I was praying, I felt God say to me, this is not what I've called you to do. Not that it's an entirely different business model, but God has called me to do more, and I was limiting Him. I said, God, if I can just make just a little amount of money to pay my bills, that was it. But He has called me to nations. He has called me to territories, and I was limiting Him by my own understanding. And that was a point where I began to struggle. To be honest with you, it was a struggle, because I've built up this brand, I've built up this Instagram audience, and how do I just wake up and say, you know what, I'm starting all over from the scratch again, doing it God's way? It was a struggle for me, because I built up this audience. Even though I knew at that time I was misaligned, the business was draining my soul away, nothing was working, strategy wasn't working. So that was why I was always implementing strategy upon strategy. And so I went to God, and God began to refine my identity, and God began to work on how I was seeing myself. Now, it was a struggle. God didn't just say, you know what, going to this, and I went there and I said, you know what, God has told me to do it. It was a struggle, a lot of back and forth. And I said, God, there has to be another way. I can't just lose all my followers. I can't just lose I can't just lose everything just to be able to go ahead and raise women of wealth. I can't just do that. It was a struggle. But then I discovered that why was I doing what I was doing, this current strategy I was using, the business plan I was using? Why was I doing all of that? I discovered because I saw what other people were doing. It wasn't because of this was what God has called me to do. I knew whatever God has called me to do would need me to speak a lot, but at the time I was hiding behind being a faceless brand. I was hiding behind being, I don't want anybody to see my face, I don't want anybody to know my voice. I would always check on trend, I'll follow the trend, I would say this is exactly how this entrepreneur does it, and I'll follow suit without even going to ask God that, what do you have for me? I was basically building my business based on what I was seeing, and nothing is wrong with that, to be honest with you. If you see what other people are doing that are successful and you feel peaceful with it, but it has to be what it's aligned with you. The problem I see a lot of people keep doing is that they keep building businesses that God didn't tell them to build, and that's why it's beginning to sound like a burden instead of being a blessing. They are getting anxious about and not making sales business is not bad. You can wake up tomorrow and start a restaurant business and make millions of dollars. But is it what God has called you to do? Because if you end up carrying a load that God has not asked you to carry, or you don't have the grace to carry, it might end up being more of a curse than a blessing. And I swear that I was building based on pattern and not building based on what is actually my own calling and who God has sent me to. I was doing it because I saw A entrepreneur doing it and making maybe millions of dollars. I saw B entrepreneur doing it and making millions of dollars. There's nothing bad in following procedures and frameworks, but then you have to make sure that it's aligned with what you're currently doing, right? You're not trying to jump. A lot of women, why they are struggling today, is that they're trying to jump, do a business because this person say, oh, I did this business and I made $1 million, and then if you let me jump and do it, and at the end of the day they don't get that same result, and they say, you know what, I got scammed. You didn't get scammed. You just did not ask God if this was what He has called you to do. So for me, God told me to completely delete everything. Not that it's wrong. So the business framework is still what I'm still doing. So like digital product, courses, coaching, all of that is still what I'm doing. But this time I'm speaking more to who He has sent me to. So the strategy or the framework through which I'm doing it still remains the same, but who I'm speaking to had to change, because I was speaking to people at the time who were having a lot of hustle mentality, toxic people, and it really drained my business. Honest with you, it was a solid plan. It was solid. As somebody who is really skilled in business, as a business consultant, as a business coach, I know exactly what it takes. Okay, I know what it takes, the strategy, the tactics. It was perfect. I knew, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is the back end. This is the front end. This is what we're going to do. This is exactly how we're going to run out. These are the numbers. These are the webinars. I knew everything. So it was not that the business plan wasn't perfect. It was perfect. But God said, this is not what I've called you to do. And that was a huge blow on me. One thing for sure is that when you follow the plan of God for your life, everything else flows. Grateful because it came with peace of mind, joy. I could literally feel the joy that I have not felt in years, for a long time, when I decided to say yes to what God has for me in my business. So the next thing I actually experienced was that my business transformed. I mean, I literally went from begging client to pay me $500. I was reducing my prices, to attracting clients that were willing to pay even as high as $50,000. So that's one thing that is really powerful when you are in alignment with God's way for your life. The women that I work with, most of them, sometimes I discover that it's not really about the strategy. And if it's that maybe I've not been a business strategist or a business consultant, I would say, well, maybe strategy. Trust me, I've been there. I've worked with, mentors that have made multiple 9 figures. And while that is key, that's not to say that we do not look at that when I work with those ladies. We look at the business, we audit your business, okay? We see what needs to be fixed. But before then, the most important aspect is, I always ask is, are you aligned? Is your business aligned with what God has called you to do? Because I discovered that once that is in place, every other challenge or blocks you are encountering becomes like a little thing. Okay, another thing I discovered as well too when I work with those ladies is, most times, that's the thing, you need to understand that there are seasons. If you watch my training on when I talk about the feminine woman, why feminine women are winning, I spoke a lot about this. I need to understand that business are in seasons and circles. Now, most people, they are in their season of preparation, but then they're expecting a reward and they get frustrated. So when you're in your season of preparation or refining, no matter even if you hire a business coach and pay the person $100K and the person tell you this is the strategy that's going to work, most times it might not work. So that's why sometimes it's very important that you get someone who understands the spiritual and the physical and the strategy side of business. It's very key. So that was one thing I realized. So at the moment I got away from that, that's not to say that I don't have online courses, digital, I still sell those, but right now it's that God called me to a higher level. I was trying to play small. I was trying to be at a lower level, but God was calling me to a higher level. And that was a struggle for me. Another reason why I struggle with that so much, it was the fact that I didn't grow up in a place where luxury was a thing, right? Even for me, raising my prices to the 10,000, 25,000, even as high as 100K, it was a struggle. It was a real struggle. until God had to shift my identity. One of the few lessons I want to pick up from here is, whereby you are in a place, you are currently in business at the moment and you are trying everything possible and it's not working out. You are doing everything, getting the courses, getting the coaches, it's not working out, or no matter what you're doing, it's not working out. I want you to take a pause, because that might just be a sign that God is calling you to do something different. Okay, you are currently at a job you hate, and it's like no matter what you're doing, you just hate what you're doing at the moment. That is a sign that God is calling you to step up. Okay, what do you do when you get to that season like that, so that you can be able to maximize it, just like I did? The first thing is to understand that when God is directing you, the direction of God brings peace of mind. Okay, like I said, when I had to change that business plans completely and go up to what God was calling me to do, I felt happy and joyful, even when I was losing followers, even when it came with initially a huge decline, before it started going up all of a sudden. But then one thing that happened was there was peace. I was doing what I was doing no longer out of force, joy. What I'm currently doing right now, even putting myself in front of a camera, I was doing it with joy, with peace of mind. I was no longer afraid to charge, 100K. Because at that point, even when the client has not yet even showed face, I could confidently do it, compared to the old me that would be so afraid. There were times that I would be on a sales call with a client at the time back then, and because of fear, I would bring down my price. Maybe something is worth about $3,000. I'll suddenly say $500. I didn't do $500. I'll still end up begging, say, please, I'll give you a discount, and the person might even end up not buying, or saying, I'll get back to you. And you know what that means? They don't end up purchasing. So that's what usually happens. Now, once you understand that the God's direction brings peace of mind, so ask yourself that what I'm currently doing right now is do I have God's peace? Do I have the peace of God inside it? Okay, and when you are in that season, that crossroads season, does it align with scripture? Okay, so you have to know that whatever God has called you to do, does it align with the will of God for your life? God will not tell you to do something that contradicts His word. Okay, like I said, for me, I know I'm called to the premium woman. That's not to say that people that charge maybe lesser amount of money or that sell cheaper product are bad. God can call them something different, but you need to understand your call and know where God has positioned you to be. Okay, and then the other part is seek confirmation. Now, the confirmation, you have to be very careful with that, because seeking confirmation from somebody who has been there and done that. Now, from God first of all. Okay, pray about God's will for your life, and God can confirm things to you through different means, but the first most important confirmation is His word, and sometimes it can come through dream. The other part is also having a spiritual guide, like a mentor, and also a business mentor in your life. Now, this is very tricky. What I'm saying is very tricky is because, like I said, you have to understand that, yes, a business mentor, if I were to go to a business mentor at that time, or my business mentor, I had a couple of business mentors, and one of them said this was a wrong move. I was doing very well at this. Why do you want to suddenly change? Why do you want to suddenly go into this? You are not qualified for this. And if I had listened to that person, I probably would not be doing what I'm doing right now. I probably would have still be at that business that was sucking life out of my soul. So you have to choose. That's why when you are choosing a business mentor, you have to choose somebody who understands the spiritual and the strategical side of business. Okay, you have to be very careful, because men will see through their own lens, through their own limitation. So that's why most times the ladies that I work with, I'm being careful whenever I tell them to do something, because I'm saying that is because I know that sometimes what works for A might not work for B. So what we do is I ask God specifically that, what are you saying about this particular person? For example, if you book the magnetic shift session, that's one thing I do. You are not just coming to get strategy. Okay, why is your business not working? It's not working because of that. I say, okay, you know what, just post this a day, post that a day. No, it's a complete shift for me. Okay, I pray before the session and I say, God, this particular person, what are you saying about this particular person? What is the strategy? And that's why sometimes the testimonials are amazing, not because of its magic or anything like that. It's because of we are working in alignment with what God has said. So it's very key. You seek guidance, you seek confirmation. Sometimes wherever God is telling you to do might not make sense. So so many women for so long would try to jump into business because of that's what's raining. This person will say, I did this business, that's what is raining, and then you try to do it. Know what works for you, know what God has called you to be. It's not about being careless, it's about being spirit-led, because the truth is, when you are building in accordance with the pattern that God has positioned us. Tell me, have you ever gotten to a crossroad where God needed you to stop doing something and needed you to turn, either make a U-turn or go another direction differently? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your comments, and if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in my next video.